When the doctor said the word cancer, I didn't flinch. Not because I wasn't afraid, but because I've spent 67 years learning how to swallow pain without choking on it. Stage 3 breast cancer. A small, aggressive tumor. Immediate treatment necessary. The words swirled around the sterile white room while I sat clutching my cardigan, half listening, half counting the seconds since my world tilted. The first person I called was my daughter, Claire. Not because we were particularly close anymore. We hadn't been for years. Not since she got married and slowly replaced our Sunday lunches with occasional phone calls and "Sorry, Mom, been busy." But because I needed her. Not for long. Not even to live with me. Just a few weeks, I told her, to help me after chemo sessions, just until I got my feet back under me. Her voice on the phone was soft and full of guilt. "Mom, I really wish I could, but Linda, Ethan's mom, isn't doing well either. She's bedridden, and we promised Ethan's dad we'd help out this month. It's just really bad timing." I swallowed hard. Linda, the same woman who once told Claire, "I don't believe in store-bought cake mixes," with a smug smile at Claire's bridal shower. The same woman who gave her a vacuum for Christmas. Twice. Still I nodded. Even though she couldn't see me. Of course, Claire. Family comes first. I laughed bitterly after I hung up. Apparently, I wasn't family anymore. Just a favor she didn't have time for. Chemo started on a Monday. I'd arranged for a taxi and packed my own bag. My neighbor, sweet Mr. Grant from next door, helped walk me to the car when I couldn't keep my balance. The nurses were kind. The ward was cold. The nausea came fast and stayed like an uninvited guest who wouldn't stop knocking. I never told Claire how sick I really got, how I threw up blood that second week, how I had to crawl to the bathroom once because my legs just gave up. She texted me occasionally, generic things. "How's treatment going? Don't push yourself, Mom. Wish I could be there." I always replied kindly, "Hanging in there. Thanks for checking. Hope Linda's feeling better." What else could I do? I wasn't about to beg for her love. 3 weeks into treatment, I was sitting in bed, nursing a splitting headache and dry mouth, when I decided to scroll through Facebook. I don't usually bother. I'm not the type to air my life online. But sometimes, it's nice to see baby photos or neighbors' vacation pics. That's when I saw it. Claire's smiling face. Arms around Ethan. Sunlight in the background. Sunglasses. Matching sun hats. A caption with a string of laughing emojis. "First cruise as a family. Hashtag bliss. Hashtag Mediterranean dream. Hashtag grateful." My hand froze. I blinked, scrolled. Another photo. And another. Her in a white dress, sipping wine. Ethan holding up a lobster tail with a grin. Even Linda, her supposedly sick mother-in-law, sitting upright in a sun chair with a daiquiri in one hand. They weren't just getting away for the weekend. They were on a 2-week luxury cruise. I sat there in silence. The 4 machine beeped beside me. The air in my room smelled like antiseptic and metal. I'd just thrown up 30 minutes earlier. My hands were trembling, but it wasn't the chemo this time. She had lied. She had looked me in the eye, figuratively, and chosen a woman who once criticized my lasagna over me. She'd let me rot in a chemo chair while she danced on a yacht. And that's when I picked up my phone and sent her one message. Only 6 words, but they were enough to slice through the ocean breeze and cocktail haze like a blade. "Glad Linda recovered in time. Enjoy." I didn't need to say anything else. She'd know, and she'd regret everything. The moment I hit send, I dropped the phone face down on my blanket like it was on fire. I wasn't expecting a reply. I didn't want an apology. I just needed her to feel it, to sit with the sting the same way I had sat, bone-tired and sick, while she smiled for pictures on a boat. I didn't check the phone for another hour, maybe more. But when I finally did, I saw the first of many missed calls. Claire's name, again and again. A barrage of messages followed, all popping up one after the other like popcorn in a pan. Mom, what are you talking about? Please, don't read into things. It's not what it looks like. We were invited last minute. Linda was feeling better. I didn't want to upset you. I'm so sorry. Can we talk? Guilt was bleeding through every sentence, but I didn't reply. What was there to say? She chose to leave me sick and alone, and now she wanted to explain it all away because I had seen it. Not because she missed me, not because she suddenly realized what she'd done, but because she got caught. 3 days passed. I heard nothing after that last flood of messages. It was quiet again, the kind of quiet that wraps around you like damp wool. Claire didn't call. Ethan didn't text. No new photos. Not even a comment. But I knew the silence wasn't peace. It was damage control. They were still out there, no doubt scrambling for the right words to make it all go away. Meanwhile, I had another chemo session. This one hit harder. My mouth was full of sores. My hair had begun thinning. And worst of all, the nurse had to call in an extra hand because I fainted midway through the drip. They gave me crackers and juice, held my hand, helped me back into the cab home. No daughter in sight. Grant saw me struggling to get out of the car and came jogging over. He offered to make me soup, even helped bring in my groceries later that evening. Anything you need, just knock, he said. He meant it. Funny how a retired history teacher with bad knees became more of a lifeline than my only child. The next week, something unexpected happened. I got a call, but not from Claire. It was Ethan. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity got the better of me. Mrs. Baines, he started, voice hesitant. I know you probably don't want to hear from either of us right now, but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. He wasn't stuttering, but I could tell he'd rehearsed this over and over. Claire had probably coached him. We didn't mean to hurt you. Linda's health really was bad a few months ago. The trip came up last minute, and Claire, she didn't want to burden you with it. We thought maybe if we kept it quiet. Look, I know it looks awful. It is awful, I said flatly. There was a pause, a long one. You're right, he said. I think Claire wants to fix this. She's been crying for days. Good. Let her cry. She'll be home in 2 days. She's flying back early. I said nothing. I just hung up. 2 days later, I heard the car door slam in the driveway. I didn't get up from my chair. I didn't move when I heard her keys fumbling in the front door lock. She opened it slowly, as if unsure whether I'd be there at all. Mom, her voice was smaller than I remembered. Funny how your child can grow into a stranger so quickly. I looked at her, tired face, designer travel bag, and a souvenir tote that read Barcelona vibes. I kept my face still. I know what I did was wrong, she said. I should have told you the truth. I didn't think you'd take it well. You thought lying was better. Her shoulders sagged. No, she whispered. I was selfish. The air between us was heavy. Too heavy to fill with apologies or justifications. You weren't just selfish, I said quietly. You were cruel, Claire. You left your mother, your only living parent, to deal with cancer alone. You gave my care to an old man next door while you drank wine on a boat. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I didn't know how sick you were, because you didn't ask. I didn't scream. I didn't slam anything. That would have been easier for her to dismiss. No, I wanted her to hear me through her shame, to let the silence echo with everything she didn't do. She stood there, hands shaking, lips quivering. I want to make it right, she finally said. Please, let me try. I looked at her. This woman who used to run barefoot through the house, who used to cry if I didn't wave from the school gate. And I said one thing, Start by staying, really staying, because next time there may not be a second chance. Claire stayed, not in the way I expected, full of energy and overcompensation like some sitcom daughter rushing to make amends. No, she moved through the house like someone trying to tiptoe through a crime scene she created. She cooked awkward dinners. She fluffed pillows I didn't need fluffed. She offered help I rarely accepted. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate the effort. It just didn't fit. Because the hardest part of being hurt isn't the pain. It's pretending not to remember it when the person who caused it suddenly decides to care. On her third day back, I caught her standing in the hallway, staring at an old photo, one of us from when she was 8. We were in the kitchen, both covered in flour, laughing like lunatics over a cake we'd ruined. She didn't know I was watching. She wiped her eye quickly and whispered, "I miss her," like a confession to the girl she used to be. I went back to bed after that, not because I was tired, but because healing, real healing, doesn't happen with speeches or hugs. It happens in silence, in consistency. And I needed to see if she could do that. If she could stay not just when it was dramatic and urgent, but when it was boring, uncomfortable, and slow. The next few weeks bled together in a haze of medications, nausea, and short walks down the driveway. Claire drove me to treatments now. She waited in the car, usually sipping coffee and reading. Sometimes I'd catch her crying. Not loud, not theatrical, just quiet, like someone finally realizing the consequences of years they couldn't rewind. One day, while I was brushing my thinning hair in the mirror, she came up behind me with a scarf in her hands. "I bought you this," she said, placing it gently beside me. It was silk, soft blue with tiny sunflowers stitched around the edges. I didn't cry, but my throat burned. That night, we watched a movie together for the first time in years. Something light, with dancing and music. She dozed off halfway through, her head resting awkwardly against the armrest. I covered her with the blanket, not because she deserved it yet, but because grace isn't about who's worthy, it's about who's trying. One morning, I got a call from the hospital. My blood work was showing signs of improvement. The tumor had responded better than they'd hoped. The doctor said the words optimistic outlook, and I almost laughed. I hung up, walked to the kitchen, and told Claire. She screamed, actually screamed. Then she hugged me too hard and cried into my shoulder. And I realized something in that moment, something sharp and simple. She did love me, but love that doesn't show up when it matters is just a beautiful ghost. And ghosts don't make soup. Ghosts don't wash puke-stained sheets at 3 a.m. Ghosts don't stay. People do. So I made a choice, not to forget, but to forgive. Not because she asked me to, not because it made the past okay, but because I wanted to give myself the peace she had tried to take. Then came the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, slipped between flyers and junk mail. My name in bold, official ink, a return address I didn't recognize. I opened it at the kitchen table, while Claire was out getting groceries, and my heart stopped halfway through the first line. Mrs. Baines, I hope this letter finds you well. I am writing in regard to a matter your late husband handled discreetly over a decade ago. It wasn't about the cancer. It wasn't about Claire. It was about a hidden account. One my late husband, Harold, had apparently created under a trust name, intended for long-term care in the event of emergency circumstances. The account held $184,000. I sat there frozen, hand trembling, rereading the paragraph again and again. He never told me, not once, not in our 42 years of marriage, not even when he knew he was dying. The letter explained that the trustee had tried to contact me after Harold's death, but the paperwork had been lost due to a clerical error. And now, with a cancer diagnosis listed in hospital records, they'd finally tracked me down. There it was, a lifeline I never knew existed. And more than that, a question. Why had he kept it a secret? Claire returned a few minutes later, cheerfully holding a bag of groceries. They had the good bread on sale, she announced. I said nothing, just folded the letter, tucked it under my placemat, and smiled faintly. For 2 weeks, Claire tried. She canceled appointments, skipped brunches, even turned down a trip to Aspen with Ethan's firm. She stayed. She cleaned the house without being asked, drove me to chemo sessions, sat beside me even when I was too exhausted to speak. She brought tea, warm socks, new books. But what struck me most wasn't any of that. It was the way she listened. Not the kind of listening you do while checking your phone or waiting to respond, but the kind that's quiet and still, like someone realizing they've been deaf for years. She asked about my childhood, my late husband, what I was most afraid of, and then what I wanted if I had more time. I told her the truth. I didn't want to die in this house. Not in this stale little living room with the crooked lamp and sun-faded curtains. Not on the same street where everyone just nodded politely but never really looked at me. I wanted the ocean, not to cruise it, but to sit near it. I wanted wind in my thinning hair, the sound of gulls, and the salt sting of waves. I wanted to matter to someone not out of guilt, but love. Claire nodded, tears running silently. I didn't know, she said. You didn't ask, I replied. But something had shifted. She wasn't defensive anymore. She wasn't performing. She was present. That weekend, she came into my room with a folded brochure in her hand and a strange gleam in her eyes. Mom, she said, I have an idea. It was a small rental cottage, oceanfront, simple, blue shutters, a white fence, just outside Monterey. I thought we could go, for a few weeks, just you and me, she said. I already cleared it with your oncologist. There's a hospital nearby. They can handle your next 2 rounds of treatment. I blinked. Claire. She knelt beside my chair. I know it won't fix what I did, she said, but maybe it can be the beginning of something better. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself believe it. So, we went. The drive was long. I threw up once. We had to pull over when the nausea became too much. But we laughed through it. Real laughter. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. The moment we stepped into the cottage, I breathed deeper than I had in months. It smelled like lemon soap and sea air. There were blankets folded on a wicker chair, a little reading nook by the window, and the sound of waves crashing just beyond the screen door. Claire helped me unpack, then made soup from scratch. She tucked me into bed that night like I used to do for her. And in the morning, I woke to the scent of coffee and the sight of her sketching something in a notebook by the patio. I walked over, slowly, and peered over her shoulder. It was a list. Things I want to know about my mother. Her first heartbreak. Her biggest regret. What she dreamed of becoming. Her favorite song when she was 20. What made her fall in love with Dad. Her happiest day. The scariest moment she ever survived. What she wants to leave behind. I touched the page with shaking fingers. I don't know if I'll have time to tell you all of it, I said quietly. Claire closed the notebook and looked up. Then I guess we'd better start today. And just like that, something bloomed again. Not the old bond we once had. No, that one was gone, buried under years of silence and hurt, but something new, fragile, honest, and rooted in truth. Maybe not every daughter gets to come back. Maybe not every mother lets them. But for now, for this day, we were both exactly where we needed to be, and that was enough. We spent 21 days at the ocean cottage. Claire never once left my side. We filled that little blue notebook, page after page. She asked the hard questions. I gave the raw answers. We talked about love, fear, betrayal, and forgiveness. I told her how her father and I eloped in secret, how we danced barefoot in the kitchen even when we were broke, and how he died holding my hand and saying her name. She wept when I told her how I used to listen outside her bedroom door just to hear her breathing as a child, how I stayed awake during her fever nights, and how I once pawned my wedding ring to keep the lights on. She had no idea, not about any of it, and I didn't tell her to make her feel bad. I told her so she could see me, not just as mom, but as a woman, a person, a soul. Each day by the ocean was a soft healing. On our last morning, I woke up before the sun. The cottage was still. Claire had fallen asleep in the armchair beside my bed, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, notebook clutched in one hand. I watched her sleep, her face softer, younger in rest. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Not because I was getting better, I wasn't, but because I wasn't alone anymore. I stood up slowly and walked outside. The wind was cool. The waves rolled steady, like a heartbeat, and I made a decision, one I'd been avoiding. When we got back home later that evening, Claire unpacked while I disappeared into the hallway closet, the one she never bothered opening. Inside a shoebox tucked behind old tax folders and sewing scraps, I pulled out the envelope. Sealed, thick, yellowed slightly at the edges. I had written her name on it 2 years ago, thinking I'd never get the chance to hand it to her in person. But now was the time. I walked into the living room, held it out, and said simply, "This was supposed to be for after I was gone, but I think you should read it now." Claire looked at me, confused, then slowly peeled it open. Inside were 2 things. A handwritten letter, my last words to her, penned when I believed I was dying bitter and alone, and a legal document, a revised will. Claire's eyes darted across the page. Her jaw slackened. "Mom, this says," I nodded. "Yes, I changed it last month, before the ocean trip." Her eyes filled. "You left me everything." I didn't blink. "Yes." She shook her head. "But what I did. How could you?" I smiled softly. "I didn't do it because you deserve it, Claire. I did it because you grew, because you stayed when it mattered, and because, in the end, you came back as my daughter." She dropped the papers, covered her face, and sobbed. I let her, because I'd cried in silence for years, and now it was her turn to grieve, to feel, to be human again. We sat in that room until the sun disappeared. No TV, no phones, just 2 women, one nearing the end, the other finally beginning. 6 months later, I passed away, quietly, in my sleep, in the same ocean cottage. Claire was there, holding my hand. She had moved in with me during my final months, quitting her job and cutting ties with Ethan. She said, "He was never the kind of man I wanted to become." At my memorial, she read from the notebook. Not the whole thing, just one line. "My mother wasn't perfect, but she never gave up on me, even when I deserved it least." That's what real love looks like. It doesn't erase the past. It transforms it. She's kept the cottage. She writes letters to me sometimes and places them in a bottle, then tosses them into the sea. And every year on the day we first arrived there, she returns, not to mourn me, but to remember the mother she found just in time, and the version of herself she never knew she could become.